From Kyle, Texas, it's my dad, Marty Seldom Used Reserve Coleman. And from West Orange, New Jersey, it's Casey the Beef Cregan. I'm Parker Coleman, and it's time for the show you've been waiting for all week, Sluggo.
All right, Casey, Parker Coleman brings us in again. And did he tell the truth this week or did he lie again? Now, his allowance may depend on your answer because he always says you're in West Orange, New Jersey. Where is Casey tonight?
Oh man, the poor kid. I'll ask him what his allowance is. I owe him because I am not, but it's not by choice, I guess. I'm actually coming to you live from my buddy's basement. My buddy Jason Letter was nice enough to allow me to use his basement and his Wi-Fi tonight as that hurricane. I'm calling it Isaias, but I don't know what they were calling it on the Weather Channel. Came through New Jersey really hard yesterday. Took a lot of trees and a lot of power with it, and my house happened to be one of it. So thankfully I got friends in low places and in high places, I should say, and allow me to come here. So I'm sorry, Parker, you're not right, but one day soon, hopefully, I'll be back in Mom's basement, as I call it on the Chop and Beef Show, recording Sluggo. But glad to be here, man.
Well, we've had, between the two of us, we've had quite the weather week. I was sitting on the couch Sunday up in the loft, my little pseudo man cave type of thing, enjoying the beautiful baseball game that was on, and storm came blowing through. Sunshine, right? Sunshine, perfect. Storm came blowing through. It came and went in about 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, it took out a tree that had been growing out front for 10 years since we've been in the house. It didn't actually take it out, but it made it unsafe, and we had it taken out this morning, and there's a leak in the roof. Now, the ironic part about this was I happened to be sitting there. I caught it before, the carpet was ruined and the furniture and the couch and everything else. But we were actually supposed to be in Vegas this week, and we were supposed to leave Sunday morning. So without COVID, we would have been in Vegas, and we would have come home to a moldy floor and maybe a ruined leather couch, and who knows what the ceiling would have looked like if I wasn't there. So, man, you have to look for the bright side. In 2020, it's been tough to find many bright things, but actually that Vegas trip getting canceled may have saved me several $1,000s, because as I told you, Beef, the one time, or maybe there's two times, where you don't want your house to be worth a lot of money. It's at tax time, and it's when you need to use your homeowner's insurance because the deductible is based on a percentage of the value of your house. So finding all about homeowner's insurance this week after never using it in my life.
That's crazy, man. And you do have to, it's funny that that's the positive, but it is. And so it's that time of 2020, I guess, which is going to go down in history. It's going to be a whole chapter or two in history books going forward. It's crazy, man.
Well, we've really had it this year with between the HVAC system and the canceled vacation and all that kind of crazy stuff, fighting COVID. But like I said, there's always a bright spot, and Beef, today's going to be a bright spot because joining us tonight is Dan Hope. Now, Dan he is a senior reporter for Ohio State football at the 11 Warriors website, an Ohio State fan site, if you will. But most Clemson fans know Dan from his previous work over at orangeandwhite.com with a friend of the program, Brandon Rink, and as I like to call him, Mad Brad Sinkiff, because Brad used to always rip on Al Golden. I've kind of taken over that role for this podcast. The coach is different, but the ripping is the same. So, and before Orange and White, Dan worked at the Bleacher Report. So he's got chops, pro football, college football. But Dan, that was not the most impressive thing on your resume to me, and it wasn't even your honors with graduation from Ohio State. I had no idea you did play-by-play at some point.
High school, so that was fun.
Well, I was telling Casey when I saw on your resume, I said, there's two things about play-by-play guys. They're either great and they go unnoticed, or they're not so great and they just get blasted. So it seemed like a no-win situation.
Yeah. It's a tough job. I think I'm probably better at writing, but it is fun.
Okay, another thing I always said to you, Dan, when you read Orange and White with Brendan and Brad was that you seem like a guy who really loved that job. Not that they didn't. They're both great guys and both were really into it. But I don't know why, but it just came across to me that you really, really enjoyed your job. And I've always appreciated your work.
Yeah, I've always loved football, and I love writing about it. So it's definitely a passion of mine.
Well, you're back home now in the Columbus area, writing for 11 Warriors, a great Ohio State website. I was checking out some of your articles today and yesterday also. But big news, COVID outbreak across the Big Ten. Several of the schools have some issues with COVID these days. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so the good news is Ohio State is going to start fall camp tomorrow, and that Ohio State got its 10-game schedule today for the Big Ten. So it's good to see some positive steps, some steps in the right direction, because there's been so much uncertainty. At least there's a plan. At least they're getting started. Now, will a season actually happen a month from now? The jury's still out on that. But I think the fact that Ohio State is going to start camp tomorrow, they wouldn't be doing bad if they didn't think there was a chance they'd be able to play a game in 4 weeks. So I think that's good news, and we just kind of got to hope for the best. I think Ohio State's doing a really good job of following the protocol and doing whatever it can to keep its players safe. So hopefully that will continue. So far, no players have opted out. Seems like everybody's planning to play. So we kind of just got to see what happens. But starting camp tomorrow is definitely a good step in the right direction.
That's huge, Dan, and thanks again for joining us here. I got to tell you that we've been talking on this show since we started this mess about looking for the positive, and you saying that another team, we're both Clemson guys, but however, we're trying to take this outward, so that's why we wanted to have you on and others. But that's nice that we're finally getting some. We heard a little bit of positivity from TigerNet and Brandon, and now we're hearing it from you too. So it just feels like the ball's rolling in the right direction, and that's really all we need. We need a little bit of hope and happy and some good news. So that's good to hear you say that tonight.
Yeah, you got to try. It's been such a trying year, and there's so much uncertainty. And I have people asking me all the time, what do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? And the truth is, I don't know. But I think you just have to hope for the best. We all of us here want to see football. Most of the players want to play. So, I think, whether it's Big Ten, ACC, SEC, what have you, they're all going to try to do whatever they can to make it possible to play. And we'll see if that actually happens. But I think a lot of people are trying to make it happen.
We talk about sometimes living day to day with this situation. It's almost been like living minute to minute. You turn on your computer and you don't know what you're going to find on there. Who's playing, who's not playing, who's opted out, who's, going to train for the NFL, what schools cancel their season. It has just been one crazy year. You mentioned the Big Ten schedule. So I also saw on 11 Warriors today an article about 8 takeaways from Ohio State's 10-game set they got coming up, and wanted to get your opinion of the new schedule for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what the Big Ten's decided to do, because obviously we saw a lot of conferences decide to just push back. The Big Ten's going to actually try to start week 1. Ohio State's actually playing 2 days earlier than they were originally scheduled. So they're trying, they're hoping if they start week 1, that builds in the most possible flexibility. So we'll see if that happens. I think, they're going into it with the expectation that, they might have to delay the start of the season 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But at least they've got a schedule laid out, got some bye weeks in there built in that will provide them some flexibility. And, certainly I think for Ohio State fans, I think the thing that stands out for sure is that Ohio State-Michigan game being moved to October, because it'd be the first time since 1933 that game has been played in October. It will be the first time since 1942 that it hasn't been the last game of the regular season. So we're so used to that game being at the end of November, that end of that regular season. We're going to have to adjust to something new this year, but that's 2020 for you.
Yeah.
I read something too, Dan, today, actually on my way over to my friend's house here to record. I read that there is some flexibility even towards the end of the season, that if they do lose a game, that, or especially during that time, that Ohio State, Michigan could possibly, they're both off, I think, at the end of the year. in that last week, so it could
Yeah,
possibly happen. But
yeah, that Thanksgiving week that they typically play, that's actually an off week for the entire Big Ten. So basically, they're adding that in there, giving them a buffer. They're also the Big Ten championship game. It's currently scheduled for December 5th, but they're opening that up to potentially move that back a week or two if games have to be rescheduled as well. So a lot of flexibility built in there. The schedule as it is right now could certainly change. But at least, now at least Ohio State knows who its opponents are going to be and can start preparing for those 10 teams.
Speaking of those opponents, were there any surprises? And I didn't know the Ohio State schedule well enough before today to notice if anybody was added or changed. Or I know Clemson had a whole bunch of new teams added to their, not a whole bunch, a few new teams added, some deleted or changed. How'd that work out for Ohio State? Or is it the same teams originally, or has it changed?
Yeah, the only change was it was a 9-game conference schedule. Now it's 10. So road trip to Purdue was added, which is actually, if Ohio State's lost to Purdue a couple of years ago, that's been kind of a dangerous spot for them. That's one that does jump out a little bit just because of the history there. But the rest of the schedule was kept the same, evening it out at about 5-5. So no drastic changes in that regard other than just moving things all around. I mean, I think all the dates are different. So that's definitely a change.
Yeah. Go ahead, Casey.
I was just going to say, you think that they're going to put a little asterisk next to that Purdue game and maybe watch a little film on Rondale Moore this year?
I think so. And it probably helps, having that third game of the year, Illinois and Rutgers to start the season. I think if that schedule is played the way it is right now, that Purdue game is going to be the first game that's really circled on the calendar. So I would think they're going to take it a little more seriously this time around.
Hey, we were joking about the Clemson schedule and the ACC, and it could be because they're may not all end up with the same number of games, so they're going to do it by winning percentage, and we're just going to leave Notre Dame out of this conversation right now. It's a potential ACC champion, which would just be crazy, right? That would fit 2020, though, right?
Yeah.
But we were saying that if they base it on winning percentage, it could be 10-0 Clemson against 1-0 Wake Forest in the ACC championship. You could literally have, one team with 10 games, one team with 5 or 6, or who knows what, and 9-1 Florida State gets left out or something like that. That'd be hilarious for 2020.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think just if you think about a potential college football playoff and all the different leagues and comparing them this year, you could absolutely have a possibility of some leagues playing significantly more games than others, just depending on how this thing all plays out. I was thinking even I saw that the coaches poll is coming out this week, and I'm thinking, when the season starts, I mean, you could have the Big Ten potentially playing 3 weeks before the SEC. So how are you going to be ranking teams in a poll over the course of the year? It's going to be such an unprecedented thing. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
That's crazy. You can have like a 7-0 team at number 2 and a 2-0 SEC team at number 1. Just bizarre.
My little snark comment was going to be just that the SEC is 1 through 14, and then everybody else is behind them, right? Sorry, I had to go there.
Well, Casey, what they do is the SEC teams would be 0-0, and they'd say, yeah, but they're all undefeated. They haven't lost to anybody, so we got to put them up there, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, on this show, we try to follow recruiting a good bit, and of course, we're just starting out. And again, we can't thank you enough for joining us here and maybe giving us a little bit of legitimacy. But one of the things I pointed out in the early shows of ours was how well Ohio State was recruiting, and the numbers just jump out off the page for me. And I'm using 24/7 numbers here tonight. Like 12 of the top 88 ranked players, 16 of the top 201 ranked players are all committed to Ohio State. The only guy I think I saw who wasn't highly rated was a 3-star punter, but he's the 3rd ranked punter in the nation. So what is in the water in Columbus? All these guys committing to Ryan Day and the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan Day and his staff have just done an excellent job. And I think really the momentum started early with this class of 2021 because they got Jack Sawyer, who I believe is ranked number 3 in the country right now. They got him all the way back in February of last year. So that just started the momentum for this class. And it's just all along they've been right near the top of the rankings. They've built this class, and I think the more guys who have joined the class, they've started recruiting other guys, and it's just kind of been this effect of now all these guys, they're motivated to have, this best class ever or one of the best class ever. And so I think there's just been a lot of excitement, both generated from the staff and from the recruits themselves that have had a lot of guys just wanting to jump on board and, really make this, quite possibly the best recruiting class Ohio State has ever signed.
I think the skeptic in me thought when Urban left that maybe they would have a little bit of a drop off, and they haven't. And I know I've become the guy that tries to find the common theme in some of these recruits. And when I look at Ohio State, the common name that I've found, especially with a guy like Jordan Hancock, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm okay with eating crow, is Brian Hartline. It seems like Brian Hartline is really the door opener. Obviously, the head coach is going to be the one that closes the door. But Brian Hartline's got his paws over most all of these top-ranked guys that are coming to Columbus.
Yeah, Brian Hartline's done a phenomenal job since he became the wide receivers coach. He's done a tremendous job on recruiting trail. And I think a lot of the assistants are doing a really good job. Al Washington's a guy who they brought in a couple years ago who I think has done a really good job. Kerry Combs coming back from the NFL. I mean, he's really just hit the ground running. Larry Johnson, the longtime defensive line coach, of course, he's been a great recruiter for many years. And Tony Alford's a guy, the running backs coach. He kind of took some heat last year for running backs because he had missed out on the elite guys in a couple of running back classes. But we've seen him this year, landing two really highly ranked guys. He's kind of got that momentum back going. So I think this entire staff has done a really good job, and certainly so much of that credit goes to Ryan Day because, like you said, I mean, this is a guy who had never been a head coach before. It was absolutely reasonable. I mean, I had the same wonders if the recruiting would drop off a little bit when you lose a guy like Urban Meyer, but Ryan Day's really been able to just keep the train rolling.
Is there anybody left to get? I know they have 19 commits now, and obviously 25 is the magic number, but is there someone out there they still want that they don't have?
Yeah, there's actually a few guys that they want. I'd say the top guy is probably JT Tuimoloau, the defensive end from Washington, who's ranked number 1 or number 2 in the country. But he's a guy they've been after for a long time. Emeka Egbuka is also from the state of Washington, wide receiver. He's another guy. Tristan Lee's a guy that they've really been ramping up with lately, looking for another offensive lineman. Tywone Malone, defensive tackle from New Jersey. They need another defensive tackle. That's probably their biggest need remaining in this class. So he's another guy that's up there as well. Jagger Burton, also an offensive lineman from Kentucky. And then you got Derek Davis, a safety from Pennsylvania. Those are really the only guys you're really hearing anything about at this point. The luxury is when you have a class like they have now, they can afford to just shoot for the big fish. They're really all these guys I just named are top 100 guys because they've already got such a strong class that, they can shoot for the stars, and, they're not going to land all those guys. But even if they can land, 2 or 3 of those guys, that could be what it takes for this class to really go down as one of the highest rated recruiting classes ever.
That's just great news. When you've already got 12 of the top 88, you need a couple more top 100 guys just to round it out, right? Just to round out the class. You were talking about replacing some of the stars that were lost along the defensive line. And Casey and I were talking earlier about this, and we're talking about returning production and that number that Bill Connolly throws out there where Clemson and Ohio State were, they both lost a substantial amount of production. And I looked on that list and I thought, well, this is a great list. And it tells me they both lost a lot, but it doesn't tell me it does tell me what's coming back, but it doesn't tell me the other guys behind the starters is where I'm going with this. Right. And it seems to me that it's only tells part of the story that you being Ohio State has stars behind the guys that left behind, the Chase Youngs and those type of guys. Why don't you tell us about the replacements that are going to line up for Ohio State? Defensive line is a good spot to start.
Yeah, well, defensive line, certainly I think that's a position where they need a bunch of guys to step up because you're not going to replace Chase Young with one guy. So, I think Zach Harrison is probably the guy you look at, the guy who was a 5-star recruit himself going into his sophomore year. That's the guy you look at, like this is the potential breakout star on the defensive line. But Tyreek Smith's another guy at defensive end. Defensive tackle, Tommy Togiai, Teron Vincent are 2 guys who are really highly recruited defensive tackles who, they're expecting to take a leap forward there. And then you look at the secondary, that's a spot where I think more than any other, they really need guys to step up because they've got Shaun Wade back, but they're replacing all the other starters. So Josh Proctor's a guy at safety that people have really high expectations for. Seven Banks, Cam Brown are a couple of guys at corner to watch for. And then, offensive side of the ball, certainly they've got a ton of talent at receiver. They're young. They've got, Chris Olave's back, Garrett Wilson's back, but they've got a lot of young talent there too. Julian Fleming's a guy, 5-star coming in. I mean, he could make an immediate impact as a freshman. David Williams is another guy to watch, I think, at receiver. And then, you look at the offensive line, they're replacing a couple guys, but they've got 5-stars, coming in who are next in line. Harry Miller coming in at left guard. Right tackle, it's looking like it's either going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere who's a 5-star or Paris Johnson Jr. who's a 5-star. So a lot of talent waiting in the wings for sure. Certainly some key guys to replace, but definitely not short on talent.
It's tough to listen to that. I mean, if you're an Ohio State fan, you love it. But it's not hard to listen to it. It's just a wealth of riches, and that's what you get when you build such a program. So, wow, that's impressive.
Well, and when you recruit like Ohio State is recruiting in Clemson to a little bit of lesser degree, and obviously the other teams that hang around the top 4 and 5, Georgia and Alabama, all the usual suspects. Now, Dan, we know how the 2019 season ended, and we won't rub any salt in any wounds or try and talk about this too much. But my biggest question about the way 2019 ended for Ohio State is that motivation for 2020 for this team, or are they self-motivated anyway? Am I blowing that out of proportion?
No, you're not blown out of proportion at all. It's absolutely fuel for the team. They've got a sign up in the weight room with the score of the game. I mean, even yesterday was the first time we had talked to players in months because of the pandemic, and Justin Fields mentioned the loss to Clemson being a motivating factor as they try to make another championship run. So there's no doubt. I think that is a huge motivation, and I think Ohio State's players would love to get another shot at Clemson in the college football playoff.
That'll be a good game too, I think, for both ways. And I know this isn't a Clemson comparison show or anything, but they've lost a ton on the defensive side too. And you hope for the younger guys, the 5-stars, to some of the 4-stars to step up. But that would be a heck of a matchup, and not one that I tend to be a skeptical Clemson fan and alum, but I get nervous at games, and that's one I'd probably eat through a towel or two.
Hey, here's a funny thing for you, Dan, and your Ohio State fellow grads and fans might not think it's funny, but I was scrolling through YouTube today and I came across a video that said the 50 worst calls in college football history. And I bet you'll never guess what the first video was. It was a non-fumble or fumble, depending on what side of the fence you're on. That was number one on the video. It was just, it was like perfect timing, right? I'm going to talk to Dan today, and here we have Clemson not fumbling, as it were. Hey, we got some fun questions for you. We told the folks on our Facebook page that we were going to have you on today, and we were expecting to get some crazy questions, Ohio State, Clemson, etc. But actually, we got a question from a guy who goes by the name Cocky Brandon Rink. He wanted to know what restaurant in Anderson, South Carolina do you miss the most?
Oh man, that's a good one. I'm trying to think, because there's a few that I really like. It's not in Anderson, but I'm gonna have to say Smoking Pig.
That's it.
The thing that I missed the most is the barbecue, because the barbecue up here in Columbus just does not compare to down there in South Carolina.
Well, I took Brandon past through town when the Tigers were playing A&M a couple of years back, and I took him to barbecue here, and for a skinny guy, that dude can eat.
That's true. That is true. I do remember that.
And he wants to. He also, his second question was, where does his Q&A rank in the annals of 11warriors.com?
I can tell you that it was the most hated Q&A. In my time doing it, it was by far the most hated of any Q&A. The Ohio State fans were not pleased with his predictions.
I was cocky and arrogant Brandon Rankin, and I know Casey hasn't met Brandon yet, but he's like the nicest, most mild-mannered guy you would ever meet in your life. And when he put that question out there, I laughed. I said, "We've got to ask Dan this. We just got to run this by Dan to see what he thinks." So.
I will say that, I mean, social media, it's become a kind of a fun little rivalry almost. I know it's a short-lived for Clemson folks anyway, being 13, I guess, to today. There's been 3 games played, but obviously the Clemson people throw the 0-4 out there like they're breathing air. But it has seemed to be, maybe with the way that both teams are recruiting, both teams are playing, that this could be a game that people want to see in the playoffs or the national championship for quite some more, maybe 5-10 more years.
Well, that's a fun thing is, I think everyone on both sides, Ohio State fans don't like Clemson fans don't like Ohio State, but I think we'd all love to see that game again in the college football playoff because it was such a great game last year. And, you have Justin Fields back, Trevor Lawrence back, so much talent on both sides. I mean, I know I'm sure hoping to see it, and I think so many fans on both sides are.
Well, here's the thing that gets me about Clemson fans is they throw that 4-0 out there. And I'm like, hey, guys, what happened in 1978? It doesn't matter in, 2020. But it's just funny. They always talk about 4-0. And I'm like, okay, whatever. That is a fact. But 1978 doesn't hold a lot of water in 2020. It's not even the same game. All right, Dan, we know you've worked for Clemson site. You've worked for Ohio State site. We know you went to Ohio State. You've done NFL work. So you've been all over the country, probably in more stadiums than Casey and I combined. Can't choose the horseshoe. What's your favorite venue, pro or college?
Oh, man, that's another tough one. I mean, I would say going to Penn State a couple years ago was up there for me. We were there for a whiteout for Ohio State, Penn State, and that's a really cool environment. It's not the best press box in the world. It's pretty old and kind of shaky, but the environment, just the fans' whiteout environment, was really cool. So that was up there for me, and Clemson's right up there for me as well. I really enjoyed the environment at Clemson. I enjoyed covering the games at the open air press box, as you don't have a lot of those up north here where it gets colder. But that was always kind of fun hearing the fans, bantering back and forth. The later in the game, the more drinks they had in them, they'd start talking back to the media. So I always enjoyed that element of it.
That's great. Hey, Dan, we really appreciate your time. We will hope to have you back on some point in the season. Hey, who knows? Maybe in the playoff or before the championship game when 5-0 Ohio State is playing 6-0 Clemson.
Hey, that would be great.
And certainly, if not then, we definitely want to have you back next year around NFL draft time because Brandon told me you're an expert in the draft. And I looked it up, and there you are. It says NFL draft expert.
That is true. That is true. I do have a love for the NFL draft, so always happy to break that down.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much,
guys.
Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you.
All right. Well, that was a great interview with Dan Hope. As soon as I figured out how to get him off of mute, I am definitely a rookie. If you didn't know it before this, I'm a Zoom rookie. How about that? So
yeah. Hey, we're all learning with this thing. We're still starting this mess of Sluggo, and what a great first interview for our show, man. He brought so much insight and talked a lot about one of the top teams in the country. It was awesome, man. It was really cool to meet him and talk to him.
Yeah, he's kind of unique, right? It was a great interview to have after Brandon. I know you weren't on for Brandon, but it was a great interview to have because Dan's worked at both places, right? And he can compare both. And he's such a nice guy. He's not going to say anything bad about either place or anybody. And it's hard to say anything bad about Brandon and Brad over when they were at Orange and White. Just a great group of guys. So I can actually say now I've been on a podcast with all three of those guys. So kind of crazy how that works out. Hey, Beef, last week I had Parker on, and he talked about the craziness of the 2007 college football season. And in another little bit of serendipity, you found on Twitter where that very same day that became a hot topic.
Yeah, it was crazy. I listened to him, and what great insight. He's going to be a star if he wants to do some radio or I don't know TV yet, but he's got a great voice for it, and his research is second to none. But the tweet was basically saying that 2007 was the craziest football season, the craziest college football season in the history, and gave some reasons for it. But I just thought it's awesome. Parker started a trend, I think, and it's great.
And as I mentioned then, it was just crazy because he was 1 year old when that season happened. Right? And but that's YouTube for you, and that's where he does his research on YouTube. And he said next up is his Georgia Tech and Cumberland 222-0. I don't know if that'll quite be as interesting as, but he's ran it by me a couple of times, and there's some crazy interesting facts in that why it got to 222-0. So maybe it will be a good segment. I don't know. Hey, Dan talked about with us the Ohio State schedule. Clemson's schedule got changed around a little bit. Some teams got added in and deleted. Dan said Ohio State's didn't change except with the addition of Purdue. But Clemson now plays BC, Miami, Pitt, Syracuse, and Virginia at home. And away is FSU, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, and Wake. Off the schedule, of course, is Akron and the Citadel, but also Louisville and NC State. On the schedule is Miami, Pitt, and Virginia Tech. Is it me, or did Clemson get a little bit of the short end here? A little bit harder schedule.
Yeah, no question about it. And I know there was a trend going today on the social medias that I saw, especially because the Big Ten schedule came out, that it felt like the Big Ten was protecting Ohio State. When they went to the 10th game, they didn't get a Minnesota or Wisconsin, a team that may win that other side of the conference. They instead got Purdue. Now, I do like the storyline of the Purdue-Ohio State game because it is, and Rondale Moore's back. He was not in last year. Now, are they going to win 48-20 again? No. But for Clemson, in this case with Clemson, I do feel, just do simple trading. You're trading NC State for probably an improved De'Ara King Miami team. So you're at least dealing with NC State, who probably is going to be ranked towards the bottom of the ACC this year, for a Miami team that's probably going to be in the upper half, at the very least, based on their athletes. And then you're trading Louisville, who probably is also going to be in the upper half, for a Pitt and Virginia Tech team. Pitt's been, other than the ACC championship game, Pitt was a house of horrors in that 2015 game at Clemson. Whew, I was there. Anyway, wasn't good. But, yeah, it does seem like they got harder. Adding those 3 games, losing Akron, Citadel, South Carolina, I mean, their strength of schedule should go up a little bit.
Yeah, and what's interesting is we may end up with Notre Dame twice, theoretically, in the ACC championship game. The thing and that's kind of what stuck out to me is it seems harder, but maybe I'm making too much of it. I think Pitt is getting a lot of love this year. Maybe they're going to be a threat. I don't know, but they have to get past North Carolina if they even play them. I don't even know who plays who now, right? The schedules are all COVIDed up.
They are.
They're COVIDed up, so I don't even know who plays who anymore. So it's just kind of a wait and see for me. I guess the biggest news, at least for Clemson fans in South Carolina, is that the South Carolina game's not being played because the SEC went to a conference-only schedule. I'd like them to play South Carolina. I'd like them to beat South Carolina. But to me, it's not the end of the world. Now, I realize that when you live in the state and you see those folks every day, it's a different deal.
It is. And I know working in there and then going to school there, as you and I both did, you love that game. And it was a big rivalry. It was a lot of fun. A lot of kids, especially the in-state kids, had friends that went to South Carolina. So you got to cavort with those guys and gals. Being a kid that grew up outside of the state and got spit on by about a 94-year-old woman my freshman year when I was going with FCA to Williams-Brice Stadium, there was no love lost for me at that place. And quite honestly, at the end of it, I told myself I'll probably never come back to a South Carolina Clemson game just because of just the vitriol that it's become. So this really didn't bother me. And I know it probably is going to raise some ire from some Clemson folks about it, because it is such a rivalry and a game that's been played forever. But this one year, it's okay to take a little break from them. I'm not signing any petition that's out there that says they need to come back. I'm not dealing with any of the politicians that are out there saying that this game needs to be played. I'm just kind of sitting back and eating my popcorn and watching to see what happens.
You know, I could tell you some stories about Williams-Brice Stadium. I'll give you a brief one. I think I've told you a story about 2 college football games in one day. Is a buddy of mine who went to the Citadel, came up, and we watched Clemson Wake Forest in the afternoon. And then that night, we had a friend who was a All-American baseball player at South Carolina, but we went to see him. So we left Clemson, drove to Columbia. Clemson, South Carolina was playing at NC State. We also had a classmate of ours who played on the South Carolina football team. But we had just enough encouragement at Clemson to decide that we were going to park in the Gamecock Club parking area. Now, it might be different in 2020, but back in the 80s, it was just like a rope and a dude standing there, and we just pulled up in there and got out and proceeded in parking spot number 2, I think it was. I think number 1 was full, but we had number 2, and then went to a party with the South Carolina football team after the game that our friend took us to, and that friend was Ken Robinson, whose brother played defensive end on the national championship team at Clemson. So that's my one story from Williams-Brice that I can remember. There are several more that, for legal reasons, I won't get into.
Yeah, and the last game I think I went to was the 63-17 game, which I forget the score of it, but it was a fun one, and I had beer thrown on me because I tend to be mouthy. You can take the kid out of the jersey, but you can't take the jersey out of the kid. So after 63-17, I had some things to say to some folks and got a lot of beer poured on me. And so anyway, part of that vitriol that I speak of about these games is also protecting myself as a 40-something-year-old man now from running my mouth to some 20-somethings during the game. So I'll watch it from the comfort of my own home on my big screen with my liquid encouragement and my family, and be happy from here on out. But I'll go to any other game anywhere in the country.
Yeah, those games and the encouragement, the older you get, the liquid encouragement doesn't quite work as much or have the same effect. I couldn't do it today. I really, really couldn't. Hey, we haven't talked about our favorite barbecue sauce today.
Oh, yeah, Pit Boss sauce.
I still got some in the fridge. Now, we haven't ventured out. As you and I talked about early in this podcast, I've had a few issues lately at the house. But I'm going to take it to a barbecue place in Lockhart. Now, Lockhart's famous for barbecue. They probably got, population is probably 15,000. They probably got like a barbecue restaurant for every 200 people in the town. But Black's Barbecue. Now, I took Brandon to Black's, but that was a different one. That was in downtown Austin. This will actually be in downtown Lockhart, Texas. So small town Texas barbecue, you can't beat it. And our man, Turgie's barbecue sauce, hard to beat also.
That's awesome that you bring it to these restaurants with you. That's really cool. I wouldn't know how to do that or if I was making the chefs mad or what, but we don't have many barbecue joints up here, so I wouldn't know how to do it anyway.
Well, here's the thing. It's another positive from COVID. I'm trying to find them, folks, and here it is. Because like at the Salt Lake, I'm not taking it into the restaurant because they have social distancing. So all their seating is outside. So you're like at a picnic table. So my wife's got a purse, she's tiny little thing. She's got a purse the size of Texas. So Turgey could send us a gallon jug, and I think we could fit it in that purse of hers, right? So we're outside, and nobody says anything out there. And it's a bring your own beer place. And then a couple of the places in Lockhart, I don't know if this is it's like this in South Carolina or New Jersey or wherever you get your barbecue. But at a couple of places in Lockhart, they just give you the barbecue on the butcher paper, and that's it. You carry it to your, it's like caveman style, I like to call it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think they're worried about bringing your own sauce in there, And my wife is great about that stuff too. She brings a little container and slide it. She'll make sure it looks like part of the decor. Somebody asks us where we got the sauce. Well, it's over there on the counter. It might be out.
That's great, though. No, that's really cool that you do it. And I, living up here in the Northeast now, I get my barbecue in South Carolina.
Cool. Really cool.
We don't get it. We don't have it here.
Interesting. That is very interesting. Hey, I wanted to give our weekly shout out to the folks who liked our last video. That would be Kevron Harris, Sean Flood, Chris Griffith, Aaron Kahn. That's Khan. I hope I spell your name right this week, Aaron. Thank you for liking it. And of course, Holly Haley Vasquez, who will not tell me how to pronounce her name, so I'm just going to keep calling her Holly Haley till she does.
And I wanted to give a quick shout out to my buddy Jay Letter for letting me do this. He is a loyal listener. He shares us on his Facebook page, so I just appreciate him letting me be in his basement tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. We didn't want beef to have to be like Jim Cantori out in the storm with the umbrella. So we appreciate that very much for helping us move on down the road on this show. And Casey, do you have anything else we needed to chat about today? Or
I don't think so. I think that was great to have Dan. We got our little chit chat in. We got to reset what Dan said a little bit, and that was really cool to have our first guest be Dan Hope from 11warriors.com. I definitely recommend, if you're a college football fan of any stature, to look up 11warriors.com. It's a great layout. It's also great articles. If you like them or hate them, it doesn't matter. It's really well written, and they got a lot of great information that's pertinent to the entire college football world.
Yeah, that's the first thing I noticed about that site. It's a beautiful layout. It's a gorgeous site, and obviously well-written articles. And Dan, I'll say it again, and I know Brandon knows this, but he really, really enjoys his job, and you can see it. I could see it in the videos that he and Brandon did from the sidelines of the playoff game and the championship game, and I think it was the 2015 season. You could just tell it, and it's really, you can tell typically when anybody loves their job. But Dan was just thrilled to be there on the sidelines for a playoff game, then a national championship game. And little did he know, going from Clemson site to Ohio State site, there's could be plenty of those in his future.
Yeah, that's awesome. He basically has done in his career everything that I wanted to do. So I am very envious of Dan Hope, and I wish him nothing but the best. I can't wait to have him back because he was a great interview and a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I wanted to thank Brandon for recommending him and also letting me know to look into the part about the NFL draft and Dan's experience writing about the draft. So that's something we can use next spring. So thanks to Brandon, a great friend of the show, and he's helped Seldom Used Reserve from the beginning, and I appreciate Brandon for all he's done for this show. And with that, Casey, you know what time it is. It's time for Miss Amy. Have her take us out.
Producer Amy, how'd we do tonight?
I think that sounds pretty good.